everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to work with measurements and timelines in Lula Build. So I've set up a project for myself where I've used the blank project template and I've created a bill of quantities and I've priced most of these items. So all Lula Build projects have a so-called bill quantity. And this column is what we refer to as a measurement column in Lula Build. So you can take a measurement of any bill item and capture it in this column. So the bill quantity is a very specific quantity. It's a very specific measurement as it represents the quantity on which you are quoting the client for. And Lula Build allows you to run various reports against these measurements. So we can, for example, switch over to the resources scene. And because I've used the blank project template, there's no reports defined already. So I'm going to show you how you can manually run a report against the bill quantity measurement. So I'm going to open up my columns tab and I'm going to switch to the measurement columns. And here we can see that I've got the bill measurement selected, and I can now ask Lula to show me what quantity of each resource is needed for the bill measurement in this project, and what net amount and sell amount allowable is available for each of these resources based on this measurement. So given the bill quantity measurement that's been captured in this project, we can see that we need 25 liters of diesel in this project, and we're allowed to spend 34 pounds on that diesel. And because I haven't added any markup to this project, the selling amount is 0. All right, so this is very useful information, and you can run these reports in almost all of the scenes. You can run them against resource attributes or against bill attributes and clusters and so forth. But oftentimes it's convenient to run reports against other measurements besides this bill quantity measurement. So an example of this would be tracking your progress. So you might want to capture your daily or weekly or monthly progress against bill items and then run reports against, for example, your resources to see, according to your progress, how much of each resource you are allowed to spend and how much of each resource you are allowed to use. Okay, so Lula Build allows you to create your own user-defined measurement columns. So we can open up our measurements action tab, and here we've got two sort of headings. You've got your measurements and you've got your timelines. So in Lula Build, because you might have quite a lot of measurements, Lula Build allows you to group similar measurements together into what we call timelines. So the reason why it's called a timeline is every measurement has a measurement date associated with it. And in a timeline, each measurement needs to have a unique date. So an example of this would be, think of capturing your progress. You might want to have a separate measurement column for every week's progress or every month's progress, and you want to group all of those progress measurements together in a timeline called a progress timeline. So I'm going to switch over to my timelines, and by default there's only one timeline in a blank project, and that's the tender timeline where you've got the bill quantity inside of it. But I'm going to add a new measurement timeline here. I'm going to double click, and the code is just some unique identifier. So I'm just going to say this is my progress timeline. Progress timeline. Okay, done. All right, so now I've created a new measurement timeline, and I can now add measurements to that specific timeline. So let's switch to that timeline. It's currently blank, and I'm going to create a new measurement by clicking the plus measurement button. Okay, so that creates a measurement and it adds it. And to edit this measurement's name, we can just double click on it, and here we can edit the name, the display name of this measurement. So let's just call it, let's say it is progress, and you can give it a description if you want to. And the production unit I'll get back to. We allow you to convert your quantity based measurements to time, and if you want to see the number of hours you've been allowed to spend on a specific measurement, you can leave the production unit as hours, or you could change it to a different unit if you rather want to see the amount of days you're allowed to spend, for example. But we'll get back to this later on in this video. And the date of the measurement, let's say we are at the end of February, and that's the date where we're taking this measurement. Done. All right, so now we've created a new measurement and we can now populate this measurement. But before we can populate it with values, we need to switch it on. So I'm going to switch over to my columns tab. Once again, we're interested in our measurement columns. And this time we want to look at our progress timeline, and we've only got one measurement in there, but if you had multiple, you could have selected your measurements here. And we want to populate the quantity. Okay, so as you can see, all of the progress for this bill of quantities is now 0. And we can update that by switching on the table editing function. And let's say at the end of Feb, we have already processed 2 cubes of the foundation, and let's say we have backfilled 10 cubes, and let's just, for the sake of the example, say we've already installed 10 meters worth of dam course. All right, so you can see the net amount associated with this quantity now as well. So if we open this up, we can switch to the progress timeline, and we can switch on the net and the sell amount, for example, and we can see how much money we're allowed to have spent on this bill item thus far and how much we've sold it to the client for. All right. So as I mentioned, we can also see the time component of this measurement if we want to. So I can convert this quantity into time. So we can switch on the time component of that measurement. And now we can see that we are allowed to have spent 2.67 hours on this item so far, and we are allowed to have spent 16 hours on the backfilling, and that's based on the production rates that were specified in those bill items. So if you haven't yet watched the production unit video, please do so now, as this is explained in more detail in that video. All right, so once we've now created a new measurement and we've captured some quantities in that measurement column, we can run reports against this measurement. So let's jump back to the resources scene. Right, and I'm just gonna set it back to the standard report so that we can switch off all of the previous measurement columns. And once again, I can open up my measurement columns tab, and we're now interested in running a report against our progress. So I'm gonna switch over to my progress timeline, and we wanna see how much of each resource we were allowed to have used up to date and how much money we were allowed to spend on each of these resources. So now automatically you can see, up to date, you should not have used more than 8.33 liters of diesel, and you should not have spent more than £11.33 on diesel in this project. So this is very powerful information that you can now compare to your actuals that might be captured in your costing system or in your ERP system, where you can very easily now pick up whether there's been a cost overrun on any individual resource in your project. All right, so as mentioned, you can create as many measurement columns as you want to and report on any of these columns. So if, for example, you want to capture your progress daily and keep a record of that, you can create a new measurement column for that. Or you might even want to create a forecast measurement for yourself. So when Lula integrates with any of the planning tools and you import a schedule, that actually automatically creates a bunch of forecast measurements for you to run them against, but you can do this manually as well. And then another powerful feature of measurements is creating what we call calculated measurement columns. So let's say you've got some progress and you know what your bulk quantity is, and you want to understand how much quantity is still left over to be processed, and you want to run a report on that remainder quantity. So in order to do that, you can create a calculated measurement in Lula Build. So I'm once again going to open up my measurement tab, and I'm just going to create it in the standard timeline. So I'm going to choose the plus calculated measurement option. And once again, we can give it a display name. So I'm just going to call it my remainder measurement. And let's just give it a quantity remaining description, and you can add a comment if you want to, and the date of the measurement you can fill in. Let's say we're at the end of the month again and we want to know how much quantity is still left to produce. And then under calculations, you can add additional measurements by clicking the add calcs button. All right, and in this case, we can say, all right, we want to add the build measurement and the progress measurement. Next. And as you can see, there's a scale next to these measurements. So I can say, take my build measurement, one of my build measurement, and let's change that to -1. So in other words, build measurement minus my progress measurement is what we want this measurement to calculate. But you can fill in any scale here, so it doesn't have to be 1 and -1. You could have filled in 2 times the build measurement minus the progress measurement for if you wanted to do that for some other reason. But in this case, we just want to take our build measurement and minus our progress measurement. Done. Okay, so under columns now, let's just first switch this back to the tender estimate. So under columns, I'm going to choose my remainder measurement and have a look at the quantity. So here we can see we've still got to process 4 cubes of the foundation and 10 cubes of the backfilling still needs to happen. All right, and now we can run reports against these. So we can, for example, see how much resources we still need to procure until the end of the project and how much budget we still have left. So if I switch back to my resources and once again just switch back to my standard report, I can then switch on my remainder column and I can run a report against this measurement for both my quantity and my net amount, for example. Right, so here we can see that we're still going to use 16.67 liters of diesel till the end of this project, and we're still allowed to spend 22.67 pounds on that diesel. All right, so this is very convenient for sort of planning purposes and for your procurement division to understand how much budget they've still got left and how much of each individual resource still needs to be ordered. All right, so that gives you a brief introduction of Lula's measurement system. It's a very powerful feature of Lula Build that can give you a lot of very interesting information that can really help you plan and manage your project better. So you are encouraged to use this measurement system, and you will see that if you do create a project from the standard project template, it will already come pre-populated with a bunch of different measurements for you, so you don't need to create all of those measurements from scratch. Okay, that's all for today. Thanks for joining us.